Hello and welcome to Fearless DIY Music. My name is Tristan Lass, and today we're going to be talking about how to go about sanding plastics and painting plastics for your guitar or bass or any other instrument that has, pickup covers, back plates, switch plates, and little switch knobs. You might ask why I am doing this video. Well, right now I'm in the middle of kind of converting my Dean Evo 60 into a gold top-esque type guitar. I'm done with all the finishing work on that instrument at the moment, but I can't move forward because I don't want to use black plastics on it. I want it to have kind of that vibe of a 1960 or a 1954 Les Paul kind of thing. So I'm left with all this black plastic that I want to become an heirloom white, which I have right here in this spray can. So I thought I'd just go over some of the finer points of what you need to do if you're going to paint plastics effectively. Now you may be asking, well, why don't I just buy some cream colored covers? I can certainly get the switch plate and the knob in a cream color. However, I can't get this piece, maybe this piece, but I definitely can't get this piece off the shelf. This is a Dean specific back plate. So rather than having a mishmash of different colored plastics and things like that, I just want to go with the same color on everything. And it's also very cost effective because the can of paint is like $5.99 at the hardware store. And I just want continuity, and I hate just throwing away parts just because I don't like the color of them. You can change plastics quite easily. The first step is to make sure that you get a satin spray paint. You don't want to go with a high gloss or something like that, because when the paint hits the plastic, there's always that off chance that there's going to be, a little bit of run here and there and things like that. And satin is so forgiving, or any matte finish spray paint. And it'll also give it kind of an older look and feel. I kind of want that antique-y kind of look. So I would highly advise using a satin finished paint. It's going to be way more forgiving, and also when you're spraying something flat like this, it has a tendency to spread and then no runs basically. So that's what we're going for. I've done this many times and I find that that is the best kind of paint to use. Alright, so we've got our shiny plastic piece here. I think just for the sake of fun on camera, I will just sand this one out while I'm talking. But anyway, what we want to do now is we want to take some 400 grit sandpaper and just scuff everything completely, even this little tip included. Once we have everything scuffed properly, then I'll take everything outside, hit it with the paint, and I'll come back with part 2 of this video, where we just look at the finished product. But meantime, let's talk a little bit more about preparation, getting ready to paint. If you look at this little box, you'll notice I have a nail sticking up through it, and that's so I can put the switch tip right there and I can paint around it easily. And I'll also probably put the 2 smaller parts in there. And then I've got another piece of cardboard here where I'll put the pickup covers and the back plate. You want to have something like this because if you paint on a towel or you paint on some sort of just raw uneven surface, you run into the possibility of picking up dirt and all kinds of other things. So make sure your cardboard's clean, and it's just easy to do. Everybody has this stuff on hand in their households. At least I would assume so. All right, so when you're sanding things out, you just want to make sure that you're not actually removing any material. All we're doing here is we're just making sure that we're scratching everything, including these little, corners and things like that. You want to make sure that the paint doesn't have a slick surface to hit and then run. I mean, that's where this can get nasty. When you're dealing with plastic, you kind of have to get it right the first time. If you don't and you have to start over, basically you kind of have to sand the paint off, or the majority of the paint off, and start over. And we don't want that. We just want to hit this with a good coat, maybe a second. I find that if I have it properly prepped and I have my rattle can at the proper temperature, I've shaken it enough, I'll be painting outside. You don't have to. You can paint inside if you want, if you have a well-ventilated area. And you just want to make sure that you're not going to have runs. And you just want to make sure that the paint sticks the first try. Second coat, you know, if you really want to, you can. But what I find is sometimes when you hit it with the second coat, things like the little holes for the pickup pole pieces and things like that, they can start to get filled with paint. And then you have to go through and you have to remove paint from inside of the holes, and that can be its own chore right there. Alright, so I'm just going along here. I'm hitting every little surface along the way, all these little edges, because that's where the bad stuff will happen. You could think, oh, well, I've got all the flat surfaces are done, but you have to do all these little curves and nuances on here to make sure that your paint's just going to stick everywhere. As far as the paint wearing off over time, I've done, like I said, I've done this on a number of instruments. I have, as of yet, to see a place where, I mean, I've scratched the paint, but you scratch plastic too. I have yet to see something where I actually went through the paint. And if you wanted to be really super, you know, like, oh, I just really don't ever want to have to deal with that, you could always do a clear coat afterwards, but I think that's overkill, and I like the satin finish that I get from using this kind of spray can. Alright, so there, you see the difference between the two pickup covers. This one's still nice and shiny and bright. This one has been fully scuffed, and it is ready for paint. So, I will put it here on my cardboard. I will continue the process through the rest of these pieces, even a little knob tip. You know, I'll just hold it and sit here and go like that until I have it properly scuffed all the way around. Alright, I'll see you now with the finished product. Alright, we are back and everything is painted. I want to go over some of the things that went really well and a couple things that didn't go so well at first. Let's start with the bad first. When I went to go spray the back plate, I hadn't, like, you know, held the can upside down on the paint to like really clear the nozzle, and I did get a little bit of speckle on this back plate. However, as the paint settled in, due to the fact that it's satin and has kind of a matte finish, it turned out all right. It turned out just fine, and I'm not too worried about that back plate. This little plate for the toggle switch turned out perfect. It's nice and smooth, has a really nice finish on it, as do the pickup covers. They turned out great. And something I want to go over real quick before I talk about the last two pieces here that we painted. You don't want to handle these things right away. Your can is going to tell you, oh, it's dry to the touch within, you know, 15 minutes, 45 minutes, however long it says on the can. Do not pay attention to that at all. Once you get everything painted, restrain yourself. Let it sit for 24 hours before you handle it. You want to let the paint settle in so that you can see if there's any spots that maybe are still showing through, and if you need a second coat. I did have to do a light spray on this pickup cover because it had a deep scratch in it, and that scratch did reveal itself after the paint cured, and I just hit it real quick with a light coat, took care of that. Same went with the poker chip here. At first it looked awful. The paint had kind of globbed on it a little bit, but once it settled and cured, you can even see like the treble and rhythm imprint now, and it just settled in, cured, and turned out great. Tip switch, same thing. I had to do 2 coats on this. It is a rounded surface, so the paint has a tendency to kind of gloop a little bit. Be patient. Let it sit. Let it sit overnight. Spray these things, and just be confident that that satin finish paint will do its work over time. So now, I have all my plastics painted. I'm ready to get that guitar up and going, and I hope this video is of help to anybody who's interested in doing this. The finish on them looks great, like I said, nice and smooth, but with a satiny finish rather than trying to get a gloss finished paint to try to, you know, get a perfectly even surface. is a little bit fraught. You can do it, but it's more difficult. All right, well, thank you so much for watching. If you've watched the video to this point, please hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time with another video. You take care.